This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
Are you about to get the best AI shopping assistant ever? I think you might be. So that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about today on Everyday AI, your live daily show, podcast, newsletter, breaking down everything that everyday people like you and me need to stay up to date and stay ahead and actually use AI. So again, my name is Jordan Wilson. We have a little bit of a different show for you today. So if you are joining us live, whether it's on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere else, please leave a comment because today, in addition to some news in AI, we're going to be talking about things that probably most of us use every day, things like ChatGPT, or maybe you use Google Bard, or maybe you use Bing Chat. So we're going to be getting into that soon. But before we do, let's run down what's happening today in AI news. So let's talk about that best shopping assistant ever. So a new report today shows that Amazon just posted a listing for a job posting that says it's creating its own AI chat, specifically to work inside Amazon's web store. So imagine having an interactive conversation, an interactive experience with an AI bot inside of Amazon, right? Wow. So what does that mean for Amazon sales? Not that they need any more, but clearly this is going to help. But this just goes to show that the AI space is going to continue to get more and more crowded. We're going to see more and more highly specialized chatbots or AI assistants in every single platform that you use on a day-to-day basis. So it's going to be exciting to see what Amazon does with this. The second piece. So a new report from Microsoft claims that its AI is getting as smart as a human. So essentially, Microsoft released this, some computer scientists there released a 155-page research paper called Sparks of Artificial General Intelligence. And essentially, and we're going to get into this later in the show today, it posed a problem or a question that would usually require an understanding of the physical world in order to solve. It's something like a riddle, but it's actually crazy, and we're going to be sharing about it on our daily newsletter. So again, go to youreverydayai.com to show you a little bit more on this research paper, the Sparks of General Intelligence. And essentially, we're going to show you how these different platforms that we're even talking about today, ChatGPT, Bard, and Bing Chat, handled this prompt or this riddle. Very rarely do I say my mind is blown, but in this case, my mind actually was blown. Another news item for today. So ex-Google CEO Eric Schmidt talked about AI regulation and said it should be left to AI companies. So not sure how that's going to work. An example of the police policing themselves. However, Eric Schmidt made some good points, because, we've been talking about it on the Everyday AI show for, since we started, about these new developments in government regulation. And we say, hey, should government, be monitoring AI companies? Should they be setting the rules? And Eric Schmidt essentially said that he believes no one in the government can understand what is possible with AI, so that they shouldn't be regulating it. And he actually has a great point because, as a former political journalist, covering the Illinois State House for the Chicago Sun-Times, I can definitely relate. And I can say, you know what? He has a good point. And if you follow politics at all, and companies like Facebook and Google, they constantly have to go before Congress to answer questions. And some of the questions that they get from U.S. senators just show a fundamental lack of understanding that our government has, at least when it comes to the people representing us, for how technology works. So that's a super interesting one coming from the former Google CEO, Eric Schmidt. And last but not least, kind of in our daily news roundup before we jump into this AI chat dive. So is OpenAI going truly open source. So let me quickly say explain what that means. So OpenAI, as you probably know, but maybe you don't, they are the kind of parent company of ChatGPT. So you might be thinking, hey, Jordan, they are open source because so many different companies can use their API. They can use their platform, right? So part of that's true, but their code is not open source. So a new report today claims that OpenAI is going to be releasing an open source model. So what does that mean for the everyday people like you and me? Well, that means that if this does happen, the development of AI is going to go way faster than it even is right now. So here's the other thing we don't know. We don't know if they're going to be releasing their current model as open source or if it will be a somewhat limited version of their current model. But when something is open source, that means you can download and modify its code yourself and run it locally on your machine. So there's a lot of huge applications for if it does go open source. So again, those are today's biggest developments. And if you noticed a little bit of a trend there, we're talking about the big companies. We're talking about ChatGPT. We're talking about Google. Because today we are going to do a rundown. We are going to talk about ChatGPT, Bard, and Bing Chat. So first, thank you. We have some comments. So we're going to be getting to these today for sure. David, what's up? Saying that we need that Amazon AI chatbot ASAP. Do we? Absolutely. Will my wallet be able to handle it? Probably not. That's dangerous. Think of how much money that we already spend on Amazon, and then think that, that hour that you spend researching projects, researching products on Amazon, think of that going down to seconds or a minute. The buying cycle is going to be so much quicker. Christopher dropping a comment here. So I'll get to this. Yeah, we're definitely going to be talking about some of the differences between ChatGPT and Google Bard. Great question. So we're going to be talking about that. So as a reminder, as we kind of start our 10-minute deep dive into these three platforms, if you are listening on or watching on the live stream, please drop a comment. If you are listening on the podcast, or if maybe you're, checking this after the fact from our newsletter, make sure that you tune in every morning. We go live at 7:30 a.m. Central Time, so we can talk together. So the whole point of this show and why we started it was to help everyday people understand AI. So with that, let's start high level. Let's look at ChatGPT, Bard, and Bing Chat. So before we even talk about the products themselves, we have to first understand what these things are. Okay, what are all these things? Is it just like a search engine? Is it nothing like a search engine? So let's start there. So number one, these different products from these different companies changed very quickly. So if you are watching live right now, this is very up-to-date information. If you're checking out this podcast in the future, so it's May of 2023 right now. So, if you're listening to this in June or July, some of the things that we're talking about today may not be accurate. Here's the other thing. Some of these things tomorrow may not be accurate because that is how fast all of these developments come, especially when we're talking about these three big companies, Microsoft, Google, and OpenAI. The development is blazing fast. So that's number one. Number two, the results always vary. So if we're talking about some results from, and I'm going to be going over a couple, saying, hey, if we enter this into ChatGPT, we will not get B. If we enter A, we will get B on Microsoft Bing. Results are always going to vary. So, one actionable tip that I gave to the everyday AI audience the first week of our show was to start replacing Google. Whether you use Google Bard or Microsoft Bing Chat or ChatGPT, if you are wanting to research something or look something up, I can't recommend highly enough to pick one of these three kind of AI chats and start there, because this is the future. As someone that's worked in and out of SEO for technically 15 to 20 years, traditional search is going to be fading away, and the lines between traditional search and these AI searches are going to be kind of blurring together. So let's talk about how these work. And Cecilia, a great point. So Cecilia just left a comment, said, for the average user, there's little awareness in the diversity of chatbots. Agreed. Like a lot of times you only hear about what's in the media, what's in marketing. So that's why I'm going to be at least breaking down these three big ones. Okay. So how do they work? We're going to have a deep dive pretty soon where we go into the history of AI, but let me just give you high level. So these three different products are built on essentially what's called a large language model. And to overly simplify it almost to a fault, think of it as this. A large language model is a data set, but there are trillions of data points that these large language models learn off. So think like this. ChatGPT is probably the most popular of these AI models. They reached 100 million users just weeks after launch, which is an asinine thought because, even for popular social media networks, that usually took 4, 5, 10 years to get to 100 million users. So anyways, if we think of ChatGPT, it is based off a large language model called GPT. And there's different versions of these models. So as an example, the most current model of GPT is GPT-4, which was released a couple of months ago. So that is a model. So this essentially GPT-4 knows the entire course of human history, more or less. If it existed on the internet, it knows facts, opinions, misinformation, everything. It knows the entirety of recorded human history up until 2021, September 2021. So that's GPT-4. Okay. So let's actually start there as we talk about how these work. So let's talk about ChatGPT. So again, love getting to questions. If you have any questions, please leave them for me. So ChatGPT, like I talked about, it is the most popular and the most widely used of the AI chats right now. The parent company, like I mentioned, is OpenAI, and their current language model is GPT-4. Okay, so I'm going to get a little technical, but I'm going to try to help you. I'm going to try to explain what this means. And if you are, watching live here, I'm going to just kind of share. I'm going to share just the website so you can kind of see. So ChatGPT has different models that you can choose. GPT-4 is the most up-to-date and the most capable model, but it is limited. So I'm going to be going over some of the similarities and the differences between these three different models. GPT-4 is amazingly useful, but it is somewhat limited. So essentially, you can only have 25 chats with GPT-4 every 3 hours. Also, what's important to understand about ChatGPT is there's a free version and a premium version. That's $20 a month. Highly recommend the premium version. The capabilities of that versus the free version are wild. One, you get GPT-4 on the paid version. Two, you're going to have access to what are called plugins and browsing. So a little bit more on that here briefly as we get to the differences. So the biggest thing with ChatGPT, the downside, is right now, and especially for the free users, there is no built-in internet access. So we talked about that this GPT-4 is caught off at September 2021. So one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen in my time doing this show and working in this field for a very long time is people don't understand that. And they get frustrated when they use ChatGPT because they're asking it about current events and it doesn't go there. This ChatGPT's brain stops at 2021 unless you have the internet access via the premium version. So they did announce that it's supposed to be rolling out this week. Even me personally, I did get access to the plugins for ChatGPT, which brings in new functionality, but I don't yet have access to the browsing. Another thing before we transition on from ChatGPT, I'm going to talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses of each one. One of the strengths of ChatGPT is it is great at writing probably better for writing content from scratch and improving content than the other two, Bing or Google Bard. And it's also potentially the best at coding. So again, personally, I'm not a coder, but for fun, especially a couple months ago, I was trying my hand out with coding at ChatGPT and created some great, I just created playable and customizable 80s retro arcade games and put my own spin on it, which is really fun to do. And we'll probably tackle that at a different time. So that is kind of essentially ChatGPT in a nutshell. What's up to our first comment from Twitch? Apparently we're on Twitch. So what's up, Diggs BTW? All right, so let's move on to Bing Chat. Okay, so Bing Chat, as I open it up here, let's take a look.
Are you still running in circles trying to figure out how to actually grow your business with AI? Maybe your company has been tinkering with large language models for a year or more, but can't really get traction to find ROI on Gen AI. Hey, this is Jordan Wilson, host of this very podcast. Companies like Adobe, Microsoft, and NVIDIA have partnered with us because they trust our expertise in educating the masses around generative AI to get ahead. And some of the most innovative companies in the country hire us to help with their AI strategy and to train hundreds of their employees on how to use Gen AI. So whether you're looking for ChatGPT training for thousands or just need help building your front-end AI strategy, you can partner with us too, just like some of the biggest companies in the world do. Go to youreverydayai.com/partner to get in contact with our team, or you can just click on the partner section of our website. We'll help you stop running in those AI circles and help get your team ahead and build a straight path to ROI on Gen AI.
All right, so Bing Chat, in my opinion, is probably the one out of these three that I use most and I'm most impressed by. Okay. And I also think that there's some competitive advantages to Bing Chat that it is going to become more popular as the months go on. One thing as an example, I'm on Macs. I use Macs, always have. People who are on Windows laptops, I actually saw this on my wife's laptop. So she got a prompt for Bing Chat, on her, kind of like screensaver or her login screen. So, Microsoft has a huge advantage, I think, when it comes to getting people to eventually use the platform. One downside or something important to understand about the Bing Chat is it requires Microsoft Edge, which is obviously Microsoft's new browser. So they, have phased out Internet Explorer, and Microsoft Edge is their new browser. So if you want to use Bing Chat, which again, I highly encourage you to use it because it is impressive, you have to download Microsoft Edge. Okay, so let's talk about what it's built off of. So Bing Chat is also built off of OpenAI's GPT-4. However, they have a next generation model. What that means is it can work with multimedia, and Microsoft has trained these models. So that's another thing. These models, especially from OpenAI, GPT-4, DALL-E, which is the image model, and there's others. They have a music model, some of those things. But anyone can tap into them with the API, and you can train it and essentially make it your own. Microsoft's model, or Microsoft's version of GPT-4, is extremely advanced. It is called the next generation model. The other huge advantage of Bing Chat is it has internet access built in, right? So if you want to know how is the stock market doing today, you're not going to get that from ChatGPT out of the box. You will get it with Bing Chat. Another thing that's fantastic, and this is something that's not talked about, Bing can see images. So again, sign up for the youreverydayai.com. Sign up for our daily newsletter. I'm going to show you an example of this because Google Bard can't really do it. ChatGPT right now can't really do it. The possibilities for being able to look at an image that doesn't have text. And being able to describe it gives limitless possibilities to what is capable with Bing Chat. So I'm going to give an example in today's newsletter. So make sure you go subscribe and check it out. Another thing that's important to, as we look at pros and cons of Bing, it's not great at coding yet. It's a little slower when it comes to coding. So again, maybe you don't care about this. It's not great. It's not there yet. Is it capable? Sure. I think ChatGPT, even their kind of 3.5 version and their 4 version, fantastic at coding. And we'll get to Google, but right now, not there with Bing Chat. Another piece that I think is extremely useful for Bing Chat is it gives you links to web pages. So you're probably saying like, all right, Jordan, why do we want that? Well, one of the biggest things that it's important to kind of acknowledge the elephant in the room. These chat models can do something called hallucination. So that means they give you inaccurate information. Okay. So with these links, so essentially think of it like citations in Bing. You can quickly verify information just like that, right? So that's great. So again, we're going to have more in Bing Chat because I personally love using it. So we're going to have more in the newsletter. So before we wrap things up, let's talk about Google Bard. And again, if you're still tuning in and want to drop a question, please feel free to do so. I'd love to get to them. So Google Bard, last but not least. So it was just announced last week. Google had their big Google I/O event where they released the latest hardware and software news for the company. So they have made Google Bard live and available to everyone. So I'm just going to go ahead and share this screen here if you're watching. So before, it was only available to Gmail users. So if you have, like we do at Accelerant Agency, we have Workplace. So, what was called G Suite, it wasn't available to so many users, so many countries. So Google essentially fully released this. So including plugins. So we're going to have an episode just dedicated to plugins, but think of this plugins as an assistant like Kayak as an example, where you can say, book me a vacation, here's my criteria, here's the price I want to spend. And a plugin will essentially be able to use a third-party platform to its fullest extent. So Google's Bard has released plugins and they are slowly giving them. But again, the difference between Google and Bing versus ChatGPT is this is free and available to everyone. Okay, a couple other important things to talk about with Google Bard. Like Bing Chat, it has access to the internet and it has access to search results. So you can get information newer than September 2021. All right. Also, I do think Google Bard has picked up a ton of steam lately, especially after this new event. Here's why. I think that the rollout, well, it's not that I think, Google botched the initial rollout of Bard. So they actually, sent out a little video animation when they first released Bard to the public, and it got information wrong. And Google's stock took a huge hit. So I don't think that there's any denying that Google botched the initial release of Bard. However, they have a new and their own large language model. So that's what actually makes Google a little bit unique in this regard. So again, ChatGPT uses its own GPT-4. Bing Chat also uses GPT-4, but the next generation model with internet access and search. Google Bard has their own large language model. So out of the three, it's the only one that uses their own. The other two share. So it's called Palm 2. We'll get into what that means another day, but it's different. So you're always going to get different results from Google Bard and actually Bing Chat and ChatGPT as well. So the other thing that, again, separates Google Bard from others, Google Bard is blazingly fast, especially the second version. Again, ChatGPT 4, a little slow. Bing Chat, a little slow. You would never know until you use Google Bard. Google Bard is exceptionally fast, okay? And again, it is changing. So because this new announcement is so fresh, Some of these promised updates are slowly rolling out across the web to, I think it was 180 plus countries. So two last things of note before we wrap this episode up. I know we went a little long, so thank you for sticking with us. So right now, Google Bard does not yet accept image inputs. That will be rolling out to Bing Chat. And also it doesn't link to kind of give you those citations in the way that Bing Chat does. So if you ever want to, look at a long result that you get from one of these chats, I do like Bing Chat because if you want to investigate it more and learn more about why you got these results, Bing Chat makes it pretty easy. So before we wrap up, Cecilia just caught your question. So Cecilia from LinkedIn is asking, how do you suggest novices enter their learning process of using and optimizing these chatbots efficiently without becoming submerged in a rabbit hole? Fantastic question, Cecilia. If I'm being honest, a little bit of rabbit hole is useful. You will, in order to fully use and understand these chat models, you have to get into a little bit of a rabbit hole. And also, let me actually just give you a quick 3-step process. This is ours, kind of our own process at Everyday AI. This isn't something you're going to find on the internet, but it's extremely useful. So we call it prime, prompt, polish. What that means, you have to prime all of these chats. What that means is you assign them a role. You tell them who they are. People always just jump to prompting and they say, research me this or write me this, right? You have to prompt them first. You say, hey, ChatGPT, or hey, Bard, you are a world-class coding expert. You are proficient in every single, coding language out there. You only respond in code unless you don't understand, right? So essentially priming is giving it directions before you even tell it the prompt. So a prompt is, saying, give me 10 bullet points for this, write me an introduction for this, improve, this piece of content, write me code for this. So that's a prompt. Most people, if you've used one of these, that's what prompting is. And then the last piece is polish. So what that means is a lot of times when something doesn't work, people move on and they think it's a limitation, but it's not. That's where you have to go, Cecilia, a little bit into the rabbit hole, and you have to polish the process. And you can talk to these chats, right, in a conversational way. So if you get a suboptimal result, tell them, hey, I did not get the result I wanted. This is what I was expecting. And the more you do that, the more it improves and the better your experience comes. So you have to get into a little bit of a rabbit hole. Michael, I saw your question. When will Gbard be released in Europe? Google Bard? No clue. No clue. A lot of the, when we talk about the lack of regulation here in the US, it is different, obviously, in other countries. In China, very, technology, AI technology is very heavily restricted and monitored. The same thing in Europe. So yeah, we saw these kind of like ChatGPT bans going around in Europe. I wish, Michael, I could give you an answer, but as an example, Google Bard has rolled out to many European countries, but I know not all of them because different countries have different regulations, but, not telling you how to skirt your way around it, but there's a reason that VPNs are booming right now, because most people, if they live in these countries with restricted access, they just get a VPN, which is a virtual private network that shows them, so if you're living in Sweden and you don't have access to Google Bard, which I don't think Sweden has access to it right now. That might be one of the European countries. I could be wrong, but as an example, you can download a VPN if you live in Sweden and can't access, any of these three technologies, and your essentially IP address will show up as a different country and you'd be able to access it. So again, not advocating that, just saying that's what everyone is doing if you can't access one of these things. So thank you for sticking around. This has been the longest daily edition of Everyday AI. So as you can tell, I'm very passionate about helping everyday people learn and understand. I'm actually shocked at just how few people are using these three chats on a day-to-day basis. I feel most people, when ChatGPT first got popular and exploded, it goes it goes down. People stop paying attention. If you didn't get a good response, people kind of abandon it. So Cecilia, get lost in the rabbit hole. Go explore all three of these. They're all, two of them are completely free, and ChatGPT obviously has a free version. So explore, get lost. Gerald, absolutely. I'll be a speaker at the AI Summit. Happy to chat with you after we close this out. So again, thank you very much for sticking with us. Go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for our newsletter. We're giving away a year-long premium subscription to ChatGPT that is ending at the end of May. So thank you again for tuning in, listening, reading, and I hope to see you every day at Everyday AI. Thanks.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.